So for example, an RSS reader where you tap on the headlines and then you'll see the news. This is going to be really simple, and it's just to illustrate what this is all about. So in Xcode, we're going to open a new Xcode project, and this time it's going to be a master detail project. We'll see that opening up in a second. And just going to do a quick thing here. I'm going to close the simulator just to see that, see if it speeds up a few things. Okay, so again, I'm going to create a master detail application. I'll click next. We're going to call this product name, let's call it, this is going to be our photo wheel app, so photo app, and photo app. I'm going to use a storyboard and use automatic reference counting. Hit next, and I'll save it somewhere, and then we'll get started. It's asking me where to save it. I already have a version of this. I'm just going to create it there, that's fine. And I have my photo app application with all the regular stuff. And if I run it, you'll see that I will have a master detail view. I'm going to show you what this looks like, just like that on the iPad. We're going to start modifying this, adding items and all that sort of stuff. The master detail application looks different on the iPad than it does on the iPhone, simply because of the size of the screen, but also on the iPad it can look different depending on the rotation of the application. So we'll see this as soon as the build succeeded. So we should see the simulator anytime now. By the way, in the previous slides, you have code to actually retrieve an RSS feed from the web, and you could try and build your own RSS reader using, it's a very simple modification from the code that I'm going to give out today in this demo. But let's see the simulator, let's see. Alright, it's coming up. So then, it's attaching the photo app to the iPhone, to the iPad. And we'll see. There it is. So this is a master detail application. I'm in portrait view. If I click master, then I have a set of items that I can click from, and as soon as I click them, you know, the detail comes up. But if I rotate this, if I rotate the simulator, you know, then it becomes like this. There's a list on this side, and there's the detail view on this other side. Okay? Alright, now let's get started with this. I'm going to change the size of my screen so you can see the whole of my Xcode. There. Okay. So, let's talk a little bit about master detail applications. A master detail application has this controller, which is the UI split view controller, okay, that has two properties. The first one is the view controllers that have two elements, master view controller and a detail view controller. The master view controller is a UI navigation controller, which is basically a stack of view controllers. Why do we need that in master view controller? Well, because if you recall, the master screen, has a lot of rows. This one that says detailed here, each one of these has its own controller. So a master view controller is actually a UI navigation controller, which is basically a stack of these, of these view controllers individual for each row. And the detailed view controller just controls this. The other property of the master detail applications, besides these view controllers, which is an array, is the delegate, of course. Okay, the master, it's basically, the master is an object called the UI table view. And each row is a UI table view cell that can be accessed using another variable called NSIndexPath. There's a UI table view delegate. There's a UI table view data source, which is if you want to use an external data source, which is what we're going to simulate, and UI table view data source, and the UI table view controller, okay, which provides control for the table view. Now, for dynamically populated rows, the master view cells must be a dynamic prototype. So let's set that right away. So if we go to our storyboard, we'll see a few things. We'll see our controller over here. Let me see if I can move this a little bit, if I can make it wider. Here's something that I think it's a bug, but it'll be fixed. You can't select many of these elements unless they're in full-size view. Okay, the storyboard will look something like this. A lot of transition-like stuff. This just is just a way of telling Xcode that after one screen opens, then the next one should come and all that. We're going to talk about the storyboard in more detail. But for now, we're just going to say that the view controller, this is photo app master, the master view controller, right? So the master view controller, which is selected right there, okay? I'm going to go to the view in there, the table view. The table view here must be dynamic. So up here where it says content, the first thing up there, make sure you have the properties selected. The first thing there says dynamic prototype to start handling this controller. And we have this UI table view. It's in the master view controller, like we're just seeing this, right? It's in the master view controller. We need a now let's look at the this is the table view controller. Now let's look at the data source. Okay, let's look at the data source let's look at the data source, how that works. First, we need an object, a model, to store say if this is a photo album, to store the categories of the photo names. Okay, so a really easy way to do this is, instead of doing a separate class, we can just do an mutable order set, okay, which will contain strings, which are going to be the category names, for example. This is the simplest of models. So the model is just an array with rows. Excuse me. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to the interface of the master view controller. To the interface of the master view controller and create a property. So the interface of the master view controller here, the .h file. Okay. We click on it, and then we're going to create another property. Strong, non-atomic. I think this is going to be an mutable array or order set. How about that? Mutable order set. We're going to call it data. Okay, now we go to the .m file and we synthesize this. And we synthesize data like this. Alright, just to be compliant with everything. Now we want to initialize this model, so we want to put some data in here. So this is simulating, say for example, when the component will go to the internet and retrieve the news and stuff like that. We're going to simulate data. So in order to simulate this data, there's this method in the master view controller called viewDidLoad, okay, which basically happens once the view is loaded. So after the view is loaded, right, as soon as the view loads, we can just say, you know, data. We can just do this. So data is going to be, or we're going to do this. We have the accessor, so this is more proper. Set data, and then we're going to say n is mutable order set lock init. Whoops. Lock init. Gonna finish that. Whoops. Yeah, gonna finish that. And then we're going to add some objects, so self data add object, and then pictures for vacation, and self data add object artistic pictures, for example. Right, we can add categories, so self data add object other. Okay, now we have our data. Okay, it's an array. It's filled up with the categories that we want to display. Now we need to link the source of the data with the UI table view, and for that we need an object with the protocol UI table view data source. Okay. Now, luckily, believe this, the master view controller inherits from the UI table view controller. We can see this in the .h file. Okay. It inherits from the UI table view controller right there. Okay. And the UI table view controller implements the protocol of the UI table view delegate, so we can just add some delegate methods. So we can implement a few important methods. So for example, one important method to implement here, by the way, I'm gonna scroll to the end while I'm in here, and I'm gonna say this. Is it Pragma? Mark, and this is just a reminder. It's just like a comment line, okay? And this is UI table view data source protocol. Okay, so just so I know what methods I'm implementing. So I copy this from the definition of the methods. So this method is the number of sections in table view. So how many sections? I'm going to have just one section. Okay. If I return two or other section, it's going to be a grouped data, a grouped table view. I just want a plain table view. Then another function, which is another method, which is mandatory, is to return the number of rows in the section. Okay, and that's going to be basically data.count. Okay, that's what I'm going to return. I'm going to return this, of course. Return data.count. Okay. Oh, self data.count. There you go. That's the number of rows. This is the number of elements in the array data. And then the other element that I'm running out of battery, but we'll see if I can get this one. There's a UI table view self for row at index path. Okay, this is when you scroll when you scroll and you show the different data and you show the different cells, different row cells, this is what's going to populate them as they're shown. Okay, so there's two things to know here. When you scroll on a data table, you actually the cells will actually be populating as they're visible, and some of them will be cached. So then when you swipe your finger up or down, there's no lag on populating the cells from the data source. So some of these cells are cached, and some of these cells are populated on the spot. So so how are we going to do this? Well, we're going to create a UI table view cell. Okay, cell. It's going to be this can actually be a UI table. Well, we need another thing is, how does it know? I mean, I can be scrolling on many of these table views, and it needs to know which one is it. So let's start by doing this. And a string. Okay, I'm gonna create the static and a string, and this is going to be a cell identifier. A cell identifier, which is going to be cell, for example, or photo cell. Photo cell. Okay. Now, the other thing that I'm gonna do with this, I'm gonna create a UI here, UI table view cell. UI table view cell called cell, and that's going to be a table view, right? So this table view DQ, this is reusable cell with identifier, cell identifier. Oops. Identifier. What this is doing, okay, this is important. What this is doing is saying, hey, if there's something queued in the stack of cells, if there's a cell that's cached, put it in this cell identifier. Now, if there's nothing, so if the cell is nil, right? If the cell is nil, then what I'm going to do is I am just going to create a new cell. Then cell is going to be a UI table view, and here's init with style. Init with style UI table view cell style default. That's the default style. There's different styles for different alignments of the text, and then we're going to use reused identifier, cell identifier. Okay. This is our method. And then what we're going to say is, hey, you know what? So we have a new cell. This is a lock. Okay. Now we're going to populate this cell. Okay, whatever the cell is that we got, we're going to populate it with. We're going to create a string text. Okay, which is going to be self data object index. Okay, so we're going to take one element of the order set, and it's going to be the whatever index paths row is supposed to be visible. Here, the number of sections in table view. Okay, I'm sorry. This method self for row at index gives me an index, which is the index that should be displayed again. And the indices, because tables can have multiple columns, the indices are comprised of row and column that is visible at this point in time. Okay, from that row and column, when creating my text, I'm going to go to my array, and I'm going to get the object at index, and then from that index path, I'm just going to get the row. So if I'm showing row 0, I'm going to go and get the 0th element of my array. Right? If I'm going to show row 3, I'm going to get the 3rd element of my array and display that, right? So this is self data. Okay, and then I'm going to, from the cell text label, that's a property of the cell, I will set it to this text that I just got. and then I'm just going to return the cell. I'm gonna try and run this before I run out of juice. We'll see if this flies by. I'm not sure. I haven't finished yet, but we'll see if this runs. If not, I will leave it for another video to complete it and show you running, show it to you running. But the main thing here is that you have to declare a table view. We have a model, which in this case is an order set, very simple, and we're linking the two via the delegate, the UI table view data source protocol, which says, hey, load from this data source as I scroll through the rows of my master view. Okay, so let's see. Where is this at this point? And nothing's happened. No, nothing's happened. We haven't activated this yet. Oh, it's building. Oh, it's building the application. That's when nothing happened. I'm sorry. I'm gonna do it again. Let's see. Let's see if this is sufficient to get you there. There's a way also that as you select things, we update the detail. We're going to talk about that later. We're going to talk about how to modify some things. Some things are going to say master and detail and stuff like that, and we want them to say something different, like photo app and photos or albums or something like that. So you'll see this. You'll see this as we do this. So here's my app. It's going to start running anytime now. Before what's going to happen earliest? My juice is going to go out or my app is going to run. We'll see. So, do we have a working master detail app? Yes or no? Come on. There it is. So these are my 3 categories for photos. Okay. What we're going to do next is that when you click on these things, some things go here, but then we're going to change this master and this detail and all those things. Okay. So for there's also in a table view delegate, really quickly, we can also respond to some events, such as well, we can respond to events and then update the detail view. We're going to leave that for another video. Thanks for watching and stay tuned for the next one.